Hey, this is Dr. Yu. Thank you so much for waiting. I finally finished my intern year and I feel like I have a little bit more time where I can consistently make more videos. And with that said, I'd like to thank everyone who have personally messaged me, who have encouraged me in the past to continue making more videos as it was motivating for them. And that really encouraged me and motivated me so much. So I thank you all for that. With that said, I have a very interesting topic that is so relevant in today's society. It's called COVID-15. So what is COVID-15? You've heard about COVID-19. It's been on the news. You've heard about it. You've read about it. All your friends are talking about it. Your colleagues are talking about it. But what is COVID-15? Well, another term similar to COVID-15 is quarantine 15, what basically means that individual who have gained extra 5, 10, 15 pounds during this quarantine season. Kind of similar to when you were in college where you gained that extra 15 pounds during freshman time because you had so much freedom to choose whatever food you wanted to. Kind of similar to that idea, but a little bit different because it's kind of universal at this time, not only to America, but worldwide. When people were quarantined, they might have gained that extra weight. With that said, I wanted to kind of pinpoint at each individual reason why we might have gained that weight and kind of recommend and give you suggestion what you could do differently to go back to your weight before. Number one reason why I feel like we might have gained that extra pound is because we are not as active as before. There's not much calorie that is being burned throughout the day. Before, in order to get to our work, we had to walk to our parking lot, get into a car, and then get to our workplace's parking lot, and then walk to our office. So these little bit of extra calorie that was being spent in order to get to the workplaces is not being done. Sometimes we wait at the elevator, sometimes we wait at the coffee shop, go to the theater, walk to our parking lot and to our car. These little excessive calorie or little extra calorie we were using is no longer being burned anymore. So that might have been a reason. Another reason going along with this inactivity is that a lot of the gyms were closed. Now it's starting, I'm seeing some gyms to start opening up at the moment. However, a lot of the gyms were closed. A lot of the studios like yoga studio, Pilates studios, or TRX if you do that too, or even like weight training type of studios were closed. And if you're an active person, like if you're physically active, that is, after your work and go to those gym and those workout places, that was not available for you. So that might have been a reason why. Number two, you're so close to your fridge. You've never been this close to your fridge before, but whether you live in a big house, small house, your kitchen is so readily available to you. You always have that access and it's filled with all the food that you enjoy, and that's why it's in your fridge. So those are part of the reason why you might have gained weight. But not only that, I feel like during this COVID season, people started packing their fridge with all these not unnecessary food. For example, I experienced this too, but ever since the quarantine started, I felt like I needed that extra popcorn. I felt like I needed that extra ice cream that I actually don't really regularly eat, but I felt like I never will have a chance to eat those foods just because the future seems so uncertain. So I started packing my fridge with all these unnecessary food that I normally don't eat. And I'm sure you've all experienced that because I see a lot of people in the grocery store buying so many, not only toilet paper, but also so many snacks, so many junk food when produce was so available. Another reason for that was because people were not certain. I realized people were going after all these food that would last long, and those food that will last long has a lot of preservatives, and that's when I realized people are packing so much canned food, pastas, bread, even flour. I've noticed even on Instagram or this social network, people started baking more because they had a little bit extra time. They started baking a little bit more. And when you bake something, you don't only bake one pastry. For example, like when I visit Starbucks, I only get like one coffee bun and that's it. But when you start baking, you actually make 12 coffee bun. And honestly, at this time, who's going to distribute it out to their friends when they're all quarantined? So you probably ended up eating it by yourself, which I ended up doing. So yeah, so that might have been the reason. Number 3, anxiety kicked in. So why anxiety causes weight gain? Well, there's a lot of different theory behind this, a physiological response behind this, but basically, when we're really stressed out, we produce a stress hormone called cortisol. And what cortisol can do is actually kind of stimulate our body to produce more insulin, and not only produce more insulin, but also kind of stimulate us to keep our blood sugar level at a certain point in order to cope with this stress. In order to keep that level, we start craving more food. We start realizing we have a lot more appetite than before we did. So this stress hormone kind of causes you to eat more and crave more foods, such as high sugar foods. Cookies are one of them, high fat food. And that's part of the reason why we might have gained more weight, because this is kind of very uncertain time. It's a very unprecedented time where the future seems kind of uncertain at this point. We don't know what lies ahead of us. We don't know where vaccine's coming, and this might have caused you anxiety, and that anxiety and that stress might have caused you to produce more cortisol hormone, ended up making you feel more hungry than you actually are. So how can we kind of reverse this and go back to our former weight? We felt a little bit more healthy and felt like we had a little bit more energy back then. Well, I thought about a couple of different methods that we can all use, but I wanted to simplify it into 3 simple steps. First of all, try to avoid junk food when you go grocery shopping. And I know this is really hard, but right now a lot of stores started to open up, and we could go to the store a little bit more easier than before. With that said, make sure you wear your mask. But when you do visit your grocery store, try to avoid all these aisles with a lot of junk food. One of the methods that I use is I try to plan out what I wanted to eat. And I've never done this before prior to quarantine, but I try to write it down in my list of items that I have to buy, starting from vegetable, carbohydrate like wheat, pasta, or wheat bread, something a little bit more healthier. I plan things out before I go to a grocery store, and that kind of decrease the amount of time that I spend in the grocery store. And number 2, that kind of helps me avoid all these aisles, and it kind of helps me plan ahead of time what junk food I could choose to eat. For example, I can choose to eat unsalted, unbuttered popcorn instead of a buttered, salty popcorn, because it looks so good at that moment. I can kind of plan this ahead of time if I write down what I want prior to going to a grocery store. Number 2, try to work out every day. Even just because gym is closed, just because your favorite yoga studio, favorite Pilates studio is closed, doesn't necessarily mean that workout is canceled. There's plenty of YouTube video out there offering free workout sessions that are so good. I've seen like Blogilates. I've done that too, and it's so helpful. There's so many great YouTubers out there that are offering different type of workout method that can be done at home without weight, without additional equipment. So, just because of quarantine, that doesn't mean your workouts should be canceled too. Personally, for me, I love cardio a lot more than home workouts. So I try to alternate between cardios, and I do cardio one day, and then I do one of the YouTube workout the next day. I had a friend who lifted chair at home, which is kind of, silly, but still it works for him. And number 3, I kind of forgot to talk about this earlier, but part of the reason why I felt like we gained so much weight during this quarantine season was because we were so used to wearing sweatpants. And maybe it depends on different body shape, and it applies more to men it applies more to women than to men. But when I start gaining weight, I start from my hips. So I didn't realize I was getting as big because I was wearing scrubs every day. But with that said, in order to kind of reverse this, try to wear your favorite office looks once in a while. Don't just settle with sweats every single day. Maybe it doesn't mean that you have to be uncomfortable for hours and hours and all your office clothes every single day, but maybe you can choose a single day where you want to kind of dress up at home and you kind of want to feel different at home, and you can just maybe say, okay, that day's going to be Tuesday and Friday, and those days I'm going to make sure I wear my office clothes just so that I can feel good about myself and I could kind of gauge at where I stand in terms of my weight and that to make sure that my old clothes still fits. I hope you enjoyed that video. It was very exciting personally for me to come back and kind of talk about this topic of quarantine 15, which is so relevant in today's society. And with that said, instead of ending today with a quote of the week or quote of the day, I wanted to end today with a word of encouragement about this COVID-15 or quarantine 15 that you might be going through. I've always personally found this awakening that happens over a couple weeks or even couple months to be a lot easier to lose than this waking that occurs over 10 years, because it's a habit you form over 10 years versus habit you form over past couple months. And a lot of the time it could have been due to extra water weight or extra increase in calorie that happened very short amount of time, which is a lot easier to reverse compared to extra weight that you have gained over 10-15 years. So with that said, I hope you kind of use this COVID-15 or your extra weight gain of whether 5 pound, 10 pound, 15 pound, you will use this as a motivating factor instead of making you pull down and kind of discourage. So continue, feel motivated. Use this opportunity, use this extra time we might have right now as an opportunity to work on your exercise, work on the choices of food that you might be choosing daily.